together, says the Lord. Come on, Darryl. Come now. We're going to record you and I singing this song and replace the audio with that, with you and I singing it. Come
Really?
now, let us reason together.
I'm not sure that's a good idea.
Really?
Yeah.
What you trying to say, Darryl? What's point? What are you getting at? What's your point?
Nothing
Nothing
at all.
Hi, everybody. I'm Yo-Yo, and this is my friend Darryl. Hi, Darryl.
Hello, Yo-Yo.
We'll be going down. So where's John and Sandi at?
I don't know. I just got asked to do this flying solo with you today, so I'm just doing what I'm told around here.
I thought you were on top of everything. You were the one, the go-to. No,
I got you fooled pretty good then.
And that's really all that matters, as long as you fool me. Well, John and Sandi are taking. I guess this is their anniversary. And they're taking it off. They do every year. They kind of take off, and I think they're just troubled with the fact that the time is changing. That 1 year is coming to an end, and they're starting another year. You know, I think it's. I think they probably go away like into the mountains and find a cave, and they reminisce about the individual things that's happened in their lives over the past year.
Uh-huh.
Aren't we all supposed to do that? But we don't really do it. Isn't that in Torah that we're supposed to do that every year? Isn't that one of the lesser moedims?
I think we're supposed to do that all the time.
Is there such thing as a lesser moedim? Would you call Hanukkah a lesser moedim?
Well, we also have to remember Hanukkah is not an appointed time of the Lord. It's not a mandated feast from Leviticus 23. It is like Purim, a tradition of man that was celebrated by the Jewish people about God's faithfulness and his deliverance. So unlike a lot of Christian holidays, it's not derived out of paganism, but rather it is a celebration of God's faithfulness. And so we see in John chapter 10 that Yeshua himself is celebrating the Feast of Hanukkah.
Right. So that means that what would Yeshua do? If he did it, then we're supposed to do it. Supposed to do it, or we should do it, or what's the word that I'm looking for here?
Well, I think that there's blessing in doing it. It's there's nothing wrong with it's not like there's a bolt of lightning that's got your name written on it if you don't, or anything like that. But when you see, number one, all the richness that comes with Hanukkah, and when you understand the historical context of it, and then the amount of fun that it is to celebrate it. I mean, the family that we're staying with, they've got 4 children, so we lit the candles every night. They had their Hanukkah, our family, their Hanukkah. We had ours. We both lit it together. I would do the blessing every night. The first night we taught them the dreidel game, so they were having a blast with that. So, why not do things that are a celebration of God that are fun? And I'm always dismayed at when you get these Torah communities or these groups on social media that say, well, if it's not in Torah, I'm not doing it. Well, then you're missing out on most of what God has to say then. And you would just be classified as a knucklehead.
My answer when somebody says something like this is, so is brushing your teeth in Torah?
Yeah. Good point.
You know, there's no discussion, you know, when it comes to that. So there's a lot, you know, there's a lot of great blessings for brushing your teeth,
especially for the rest of your family.
And those that come in contact with you on a regular basis. That really actually goes to the next level of Listerine. You know?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm Mark David Smith, and this is Darryl. We're hanging out here today because the Craigs, John and Sandi, are out in a cave somewhere. They won't tell us where they're at, so we have to make up where it is that they're at, and we think that they're in a cave somewhere. So we're just hanging out here. We got a couple of ideas. You know, I'm sure Darryl has the whole show lined out and knows what we're going to do next, and then after that, and so I'll just follow his lead as he you know, gets the show together for us. Now, I understood to hear you say that, you know, on the last, the War Room right before this show, which you and your wife so wonderfully did and made wonderful as usual. I'm 65. Words don't come to me as quick as they. That's why it says yo-yo over there. So I understood that you needed to go get a cup of coffee just to keep up with me.
Yeah, that's correct.
I went in and made me a cup of coffee just so I could come up to your level.
Well, but you see, I've got the anointed mug.
Whoa, check it out. Man, I should have put mine in my Hanukkah mug.
Hanukkah mug.
Yeah. We went through our bins. We have storage bins. We lived in a tiny house for 2 years and downsized so much that that's all that we had was enough to fit in a tiny house. But we have storage underneath the floor, and we have these bins, these airtight, watertight bins. And so we had one that has all of our Hanukkah stuff in it. That you don't need out every year. You only bring out for a week, you know, well, 8 days every year. And we went through it and we found 2 coffee cups that were like Hanukkah or Hanukkah, you know, coffee cups. And so we just brought those out and we're using them. But I forgot I should have put mine in one so I could have mashed you up, you know, and we could clink cups together. You know?
Yeah, there you go. We bought these a number of years ago and brought them down with us. It was the move was quite interesting. We put the majority of our stuff into storage, left it up in Peterborough, as you so wisely suggested to us. Made life a whole lot easier, especially when it was like one night when we were loading up the storage facility up there. It was like minus 25 degrees Celsius, the wind chill, and oh man, I thought my neck muscles were going to snap in two. They were so tight. And then we loaded up a 10-foot cube van. That was all we took, and brought it down here. We drove through the night. I mean, we worked all day last Saturday to get the house ready and everything else. And by the time everything was loaded up, and the pets and the plants and everything else, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and that's when we hit the road and drove 3.5 hours down here. Arrived at 5:30 Sunday morning. We crashed for a couple of hours. Woke up to the family unloading the van for us, so we already knew that we were being blessed because we never had that kind of help up there. And that night we went to a Hanukkah party.
Wow. It's the way it works, man. It is the way it works. I have to, and now this is, what day was this? The December what?
22nd. It was last Sunday.
Yeah. Okay. Let me tell you a very similar story that I'll never ever forget. We sold our house and everything in my hometown, Parsons, Kansas, and we moved everything. It was three huge pickup loads of everything that we owned down to Norman, Oklahoma, so we could be a part and live there and be a part of the Lion Lamb Ministries, B'nai Shalom congregation, and which is a decent size congregation. And
Mm-hmm.
we had moved in, I think it could have been August or September, something like that. But right after we moved, there was a family in Texas, and I can't remember exactly where in Texas, but they were also loading up everything that they had to move up to Norman, Oklahoma to also be a part of the congregation. And
Uh-huh.
so somebody organized it and got it all together, and on Christmas Day, December 25th,
Uh-huh.
at real early in the morning. I mean, we were getting trucks together and stuff to drive down to pick him and his family up, load him all up, and bring him back the same day.
Oh
And
my.
there was literally, Darryl, 12 pickups. And each pickup had at least two people, if not three or four people in the pickup going down to do this. So he had his stuff all ready. So all we had to do is drive up, load them in the pickups, and head on back. Of course, Lion Lamb themselves has their own box truck. So they had a couple of box trucks and then I think 10 pickups. But it was a major sight to see is December 25th. All we're driving down, you got these 12 pickups and box trucks all trucking down the road, and they all went. And he lived way back in the woods. And we drove down these old country roads, and there's
Wow.
12 of us all going down here. We all pull in, load up, head out, and made it back before. I don't know. I remember if it was after dark or whatever. I think it was after dark, but we made it back same day. And I mean, it was like the 12 trucks of Christmas, whatever, but it was a blast, man. It was so good because we all had a great time doing it. And a lot of them had walkie talkies and stuff that we could talk from one truck to another. And it was a blast. It was so good. One of those traveling stories, man. I love it. I really just love that stuff. So
Yeah, that's neat when that happens. So, we're getting settled in down here. We're trying to get set up. As you can see, we're this is the majority of our apartment here, right here. And we're just going to settle here until God tells us where we're going next. But what was interesting is I got a text from one of the guys in Peterborough yesterday, just castigating me, telling me that the move I made was foolish and that I got to start looking after my family. And I'm thinking, do you honestly think, like, obviously the enemy is using this guy and trying to discourage me. And we just know that there's something big waiting for us down here. And there's we need time to get settled. We need time to get healed. The experience that we had for the past 5 years of ministering up in Peterborough and living there for 3.5 was so intense that we just need time from an IT perspective to defragment and decompress.
exactly.
I mean, how we were able to continue to push forward and do all that we were doing with what we were going through it was just by the strength of the Lord. So, the family has taken us in. It's a comfy house. We've blended our families. I mean, we eat suppers together, and
Right.
My wife, and especially now that Julia's pregnant, and the last pregnancies have been very rough on her. So Melena's just stepped right in and doing a lot of the cooking and cleaning.
Very cool.
It's just, it's wonderful how it's all working out.
And isn't it interesting? I was thinking about this earlier, that today's or this week's Torah portion of Joseph being somewhere and bringing his family in.
Yeah.
I mean, he went ahead, but I mean, he was there, but and it's not the same, but it is kind of the same. Is that it's he's at a better place than where they were, and he was able to bring his family up and get settled in and do mighty things. And I just know for 100% fact that Rabbi Darryl Weinberg and family are going to do mighty things where they're at, and things that you'll just stand back and be in awe of. The Lord is going to just bless you guys far beyond what you ever imagined.
We know that really we're coming out of this is our 10th year of the wilderness walk. It has been a long time. I remember very distinctly that I was at a ministry conference back in 2010. It was 3 months after Yossi was born. It was with the organization that had ordained me here in Canada. In the US, I've got a Southern Baptist ordination, but here it's with another group. And I went to the conference and I came back and I said to my wife, I said, something shifted in the spiritual realm. I don't know what it is, but I felt it. And that's when I think that the director of the ministry I was with and my rabbi had launched his plan against me. And he put me through 9 months of just torment until he fired me 9 months later. And that conference I came back from, that was the beginning of our troubled times. And it has been that ever since. That it's been a struggle, survival. We had to sell the house because we couldn't afford to keep it. And we've still kept pressing through. We launched the congregation up in Peterborough and, fought with that for 5 years, and it finally whittled down to nothing. And so we're looking forward to a new chapter.
A new chapter.
And never get rid of the problems, but I told God I'm ready to change the problems for another one.
I think it's interesting. I just turned 65, and you start doing a little retrospecting, and you just said a new chapter in your life, whereas sometimes I think it's a new portion, like the Torah portions, because we go through, even though we may be in the same place, we go through these little sections of our life that if we had our lives all written in a book instead of chapters, we could probably divide them up into portions, like Torah portions, and you'd go back and you'd see it just kind of fits. And I wonder sometimes if it doesn't fit the same path as we were talking about with the Torah portion this week with Joseph and his family and bringing them in and everything. If we wouldn't see a general similarity in I don't know, but it's often crossed my mind, and I've wondered about that. So anyway, I'd like to keep with John's format here, and we've talked a little bit between us. I don't put together on this day this happened, and I love what John puts together, and sometimes they're just hilarious, and I love what he does. I have a new show I'm starting on this Wednesday, and I'd like to give everybody a little preview of what I have planned for my show. The show is called The Compass of Cram, and I think most everybody's figured out what the word cram is, and it's a play on my name. but also that the compass of cram means that um, what we'll do during the show, and if I have guests or somebody pops in, because I put it out there that everybody is welcome just to pop in anytime they want. If they come in, they have to discuss whatever I'm discussing at that time. But we also can do a little something called spinning the compass. And when you spin the compass, you get to pick, it'll pick a north, south, east, or west, or southwest, or northeast, or whatever. The compass will pick one, and then there'll be some topics that you can pick from that we can talk about. So I'm going to give you a general little idea here of what it's going to be like on the show. I'm still putting this together. So let's just say Darryl is now a guest on my show. And so we've talked about a certain topic, and now we would go to, let me bring this up. We would go to this screen like this, and I would do this. I'm going to play this video, and Darryl, you say stop whenever you want to stop. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I want to be sure I can hear you. So I want you to say stop whenever you want to stop, once the compass starts spinning.
Okay. And stop.
So it stopped on south. I don't have south yet made yet. But it's okay. It's all right. Let's just say it stopped on north, and I was hoping it would, but it didn't. If it stopped on north, then we would it would go to this, which I'm making a page for each one of them. I just hadn't got there yet. And it would go to this. And so at this point, you would pick what topic you want to talk about. So we'll do this.
Wow. You only get to pick one?
You only get to pick one. And what we'll do is we'll take that topic, talk about it, and turn it into Torah. We'll figure out what about Torah we can talk about. So which one of those would you like to talk about?
Well, we can talk about white privilege.
White privilege. All right, let me stop this, and we'll go back to the screen here. White privilege. So what do you think of my little concept for the show?
Yeah, it's neat. It's kind of like a Wheel of Fortune, Price is Right type thing.
No, it's spin the compass, dude. Anyway, so I have got a page of topics that we can do. So I mean, it's just what comes out of here goes into there, and I'm making a list. What I've done for the past few months, knowing I'm going to do this show, is I've got all of these pages and notebooks stuff. Actually, I even have this notebook that I set in the living room, so at different parts of the house. So if something comes to my mind, I can go write it down real quick. And I've just built this list of ideas that we can talk about. So white privilege, interesting. Out of those 5 that you pick, white privilege, interesting. So what I'd like to do is take that subject, talk about it a little bit, and see how we can turn that into a topic about Torah. And one of the reasons that I like this is what we used to do. I had a pastor down in Texas that was my original pastor that taught me about evangelism and witnessing, and we would go out. And one of his deals is that when you witness, you don't always have to just walk up to somebody and say, brother, you need to get saved. Let me tell you how to get saved. And you could just talk to anybody about any subject and bring it around to the Bible. See? And then if you can bring it around to the Bible, then you can bring it around to, well, have you ever, asked the Lord to come into your heart, or do you know the Lord, or whatever? You see what I'm saying? And that is kind of the concept of what I'm doing here, is that he would put us on the spot. He would bring topics to us like like this right here and say, let's talk about this. And he's the guy that I spent 3.5 years doing tent revivals with. And he and I would play off of each other, and iron sharpens iron, that type of thing. So white privilege. I think it's interesting, a couple of white boys like us sitting here talking about the privileges that we have. And I think it's interesting that privilege to white people is rarely ever noticed by the white person. We have privileges all the time. Of course, even living in America, in the United States, that we don't really see those things. If we lived in other countries, like Africa, especially Egypt, that we would notice the difference between the privileges that white people have, black people have, or any other country that you would go in, you would see the difference between the privileges that everybody gets or don't get. And I think it's something that we should be in constant awareness of, to hone our awareness of those things. You see what I'm saying? It's something that, like Torah, we have a knowledge of things that a lot of other people don't have. And recognizing those things, then we can help share those things with others. What do you think? Got anything to add to that? Well, I drink coffee too.
Yes, the idea of privilege. A lot of what and the whole idea of white privilege is being used to divide today, to pit one against another, because it's almost as if, well, because of the way that I was born, I automatically have certain advantages. Well, that's true. When I look at the condition of the folks that I'm ministering to in Kenya, and how, what got all this started that we're doing, that with the, at least, helping them out financially, is that these kids were going to bed hungry every night. And that's something that by and large in North America, we really don't understand and we can't identify with. I mean, it got close there for us a few times. I think the big difference between what we've gone through here and what they go through over there is that we were able to not go hungry because we bought everything on credit, which they don't have over there. So at least I was able to, borrow someone else's money. It's exorbitantly high interest rates, and until God really brings release, that will continue to have to be paid off. But the whole idea of someone being privileged, God didn't make everybody equal. He's given everybody equal opportunity, but God doesn't make everybody equal. There are people, no matter who you are, you have an inherent advantage over someone else in something. And so this idea that we need to take down those who are advantaged over us. I mean, you know, if I compare myself with my wife, for instance, my wife is a math and science major. She was a biology major, and she can figure out concepts and things like that. Organizationally, my wife puts me to shame. I don't have her ability to organize and to sort out and to coordinate things. When she gets to, you know, cleaning up things and organizing things, most of the times I'm just there to lift the heavy stuff, because she's just much better at it. Should I be upset about the fact that she is better at that? No, I rejoice because there's someone else who's a lot better at something I'm no good at. On the other hand, my wife absolutely sucks on the phone. She cannot talk on the phone. She can, you know, stand in front of a class as a teacher. She's okay at that. But on the phone, she just doesn't have that flow of communication. And we also call my wife the joke killer. My wife cannot tell a joke. You give her a joke and she will butcher it. Okay. There will be charges pressed against her for it.
I love it.
You know, and we tease her about it. You know, my son and I, we call her the joke killer. And we laugh about it. She just doesn't tell jokes well. Okay. So let's not put her in stand-up comedy then for a career.
Right.
We got to go with what we're good at and the advantages that God gives us. And again, everybody is created equal in the sight of God, in that we all have equal opportunity to make something of it, but our circumstances aren't equal. And if we look at Joseph, the circumstances in which he was operating in is very similar to this whole idea of white privilege, because for about 150 years in Egypt, there were the leaders, the pharaohs and the ruling class were actually Semitic. They were actually from the land of Canaan. They had come down and conquered Egypt. And the reason why it says, you know, Joseph says to his family, tell Pharaoh that your shepherds, because that's loathsome to the Egyptians, is that the conquering class were Semitic. And so shepherding represented these people that ruled over them. Now, eventually, you know, long after Israel escaped, that they were overthrown, and then it went back to the Arabs. But there was advantage that Joseph was given because he was also Semitic, because he was of the same racial class, that he had favor with Pharaoh. And so when he went before Pharaoh, interpreted the dream as like, this guy is one of us. And instead of saying, well, thanks very much, now back to your cell, is like, I'm making you prime minister of Egypt.
I get it.
So God orchestrates things in our lives where we have advantages in every circumstance. When you get insight from the Lord, that's an advantage. Why is it that we can see the beauty and understand that the commandments are what God desires us to keep, when vast majority of Christianity abhors it? We've got mega pastors who are saying we need to unhitch ourselves from the Old Testament. Well, that's blasphemy. How come he doesn't have the eyes to see? How come we do? And it's often what I've struggled with. Why did I have the capacity to come to faith, and so many of my family members who have gone on have not? I just buried two of my dad's siblings in the past 3 months. How come they didn't have the capacity to come to faith? They had the gospel preached to them. As a matter of fact, I didn't. I remember talking to my dad's brother 3 days after I got saved and telling him that the third word in Genesis was Elohim, the plural of God. He did not know that. My uncle knew the gospel, yet he was heavily involved in Kabbalah for the last 15 years of his life. He didn't get saved. So I know the eternity he's gone on to. Why did I have the capacity to respond to the gospel and they didn't? It's a privilege. I don't know. That's way beyond my pay grade. So this idea of white privilege, it's a term that is used by the elite to divide and conquer. And whether you're Caucasian or whatever, I mean, you look at guys like Ben Carson, they annihilate that whole concept of white privilege. You just got to be willing to work hard. Why am I on your network? Why am I on the show as opposed to many other people out there who may want to, or may desire to, or may be able to? Because that's where God set me up. And I took advantage of the opportunities that were presented in front of me. And it wasn't handed to me on a platter. You vetted me first. And why did you bring me on? Because my teaching and my understanding of the scriptures are in line with what this ministry does. Well, that took years and years of practice and study and honing my gift. So was it a privilege? No, it's luck is hard work and opportunity colliding with each other.
Very well said, brother. Very, very good. I always am amazed by things you come up with, especially on the cuff, because there's no way you could have prepared for that. But it's the thing you were talking about, the Semitic people and where Joseph was, and even the Egyptians of the people that he was around. That's very good. I had not heard that before, but I agree with you because I've studied that out and never put those two things together. Very good. I like it. It's a different. It's the word privilege, period, is something that I don't think most of us ever even think of that word. It's not even just white privilege. I'm thinking of, you go to, for instance, Saudi Arabia, and there is no white privilege. There is a Muslim privilege. There are different privileges for even different societies that you live in. Like if you go to a very high, for instance, my wife is a real estate agent, and she shows homes based on how much money you can spend for a home. And so you could go into neighborhoods where the homes are worth $1 million, and go into another neighborhood where it's nothing but mobile homes, and so if you're in a very prestigious neighborhood, then you would have privileges that other people wouldn't have. That, say, a lower income, you wouldn't necessarily say a lower class, but a lower income would not have in that neighborhood. For instance, the country club or the club, that is in the higher priced neighborhood. You go to a mobile home park, you're not going to find a clubhouse. Or rarely you're going to find one. But you go into a subdivision that has $1 million homes, and you'll find a clubhouse. In that place, you have privileges. There's different things, different things like that. But I don't think that we ever think of the word privilege until we're asked not to do something because we don't have that privilege and we don't think about it. And to me, that's where I go with Torah, or with the Brit Hadashah, or in our lives. If we, let's just say, for instance, we're walking with God, we're walking with the righteous. It's not so much that we have privileges, but we know that the laws of Torah work for us, or they can work against us, and then we can look at it as a privilege or a not a privilege. And I think that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. So anyway, yeah, there you go. So that's kind of what I'll be doing on my show. If I don't have any guests, then I'll just pick some topics and I'll talk about them.
And when is it? Wednesday when?
Wednesday, it's the same time as all the morning lineup shows. So
Okay.
whatever on the East Coast is 9:45.
All right.
And once again, I hope people pop in. I've told we're also going to do skits. Susan and Hoogie and I are working on a skit. Actually, Alan Aguirre and Susan Hoogie and I are now working on a skit. I've already wrote the script for it, and we're going to record it here pretty soon, and it'll probably be on the second show, I hope. But I've got all kinds of ideas. Susan Hoogie and I have done skits for the past 8 years that we've had Lamb Radio, and so she and I are working on some of those things. But it should be a blast. Anyway, Compass of Cram Wednesday mornings. You can go to the website and find the schedule for your time zone. Darryl Weinberg, usually you talk about Torah. You just talked about it a little bit. Got any extra little tidbits you want to share with us about this week's portion?
Well, continuing on the theme of privilege, it was a privilege for Joseph to have to be in prison for 13 years. Because look where it got him.
Look where it got him, yeah.
And
most of us wouldn't think of it like that, but okay.
No, he was unfairly treated by his brothers, despised by them. And, that's got to be rough. Your mom dies. You've got a younger brother. Your father is, he favors you. But at the same time, Jacob was not really a disciplinarian. He was, by all accounts, a poor father. And we see that a lot with the heroes of the faith. David was a horrendous father, as a matter of fact. Great warrior, great ruler. He sucked as a family man. And so Jacob's, and that comes from Isaac and his sin that he favored Esau over him. Joseph grows up as the favored child, but yet wasn't protected by Jacob in the proper way, despised by his brothers. They were going to kill him. They decide to sell him into slavery instead and make a little money from him. But yet, because of the fear of the Lord that was in him, he kept him. He didn't sleep with Potiphar's wife. Just the other night, I was watching The Greatest Show on Earth, the story about P.T. Barnum that Hugh Jackman started.
Great movie.
And man, that guy can sing. Woo! Wow. I didn't realize he could sing that well. But, there was that scene where he takes this songstress on the road, and you could tell that there was some chemistry between them. And yet at, that part of the movie where the temptation came, he actually walked away. And I was like, wow, this is great. You expect that in Hollywood today that wasn't the case. But that was like Joseph. And so despite the fact that he was spoiled as a child, Jacob still drilled the fear of God into him. And he was able to resist temptation. Had he slept with Potiphar's wife, the whole story would have been a whole lot different. And who knows what would have happened. So, and then he gets thrown into prison because of it. He stands for righteousness and he gets thrown into prison. What a privilege. And doesn't Peter and James both tell us that it is a privilege to be persecuted for righteousness' sake? Acts 5:41 says that they rejoiced in that they were considered worthy to suffer shame for his name's sake. They were publicly beaten and humiliated, and they walked away from that rejoicing that God considered them worthy to choose for suffering for his name. We don't look at suffering, especially in this modern culture, as a privilege. But Joseph was privileged to be persecuted for righteousness because God really couldn't prepare him to run a country until he had him, number one, humbled, but number two, able to organize an entire prison. The level of responsibility that he had in prison was actually much higher than in Potiphar's house for a number of reasons. And so we see that it was a privilege for him to be chastised by the Lord. Hebrews 12:11 says that discipline for the time is not pleasant, is not joyful, but rather unpleasant. But when we are fully trained by it, then it will bear the peaceful fruit of righteousness. And too many Christians today are running away from the discipline of the Lord instead of embracing it and walking into it. This move that we had just about killed us again. I mean, for us to be packing solid for 2 weeks, and oh, by the way, one of those days where I was supposed to be home packing, I had to be in Toronto because my car wasn't working properly. My mechanic is there, and he had fixed it, and it didn't get fixed properly, and I had to take it in and spend an entire extra day in the city. And for us to pack all day on Saturday and then leave at 2:00 in the morning, and then drive 3.5 hours. And, we not so fondly remember the trip up to Peterborough when I was moving. And because of extreme fatigue and pain in the body and stuff like that, I crashed the moving truck on the highway, ran it into a ditch and destroyed the thing. Walked out without a scratch, just like with our accident a month and a half ago, a couple months ago. But still, I mean, it was constant persecution, and the discipline that was needed in order to make this move happen, it was very difficult. We didn't get a whole lot of help. We got some. We did have people who were coming in and out here and there, but we did the majority of the packing and loading ourselves, and it was very hard. And exactly what all that was for, we still don't really understand. But it was discipline that enabled us to have all of our stuff put in one storage facility. We sold a lot of stuff. We gave away stuff. We just downsized, and we got here. And now we're going to see what God is going to do out of that. And we've been busy trying to put things together and stuff like that. So we don't look at discipline as being a privilege. But God disciplines those whom he loves. And if we're being chastised by the Lord, and it's not necessarily just chastised, discipline comes from the same word as disciple. It's training. When you go to the army, you don't go through hardship because they're mad at you. You go through hardship because they're trying to create in you a soldier that will survive the first battle you get into. If you're soft physically, you'll get killed in battle. If you're soft spiritually, the devil's going to take you out and you won't be of any use to God. How can you accomplish anything good if you're not trained and fit and disciplined? And it goes back to, I did a message on Psalm 144 a few months ago. You can check it on the archives. It's called Being a Warrior for God. I love Psalm 144. Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. So Joseph was disciplined in order to be able to run a country. And who knows when he achieved the wisdom to be able to come up with the solution for Pharaoh, that number one, God gave him the interpretation of the dream, but then he comes up with the solution. But like I spoke about on the Parsha last week, the Torah portion, I said, but then Joseph didn't offer himself as the guy. He just said, here's what you need to do. Now find someone. And Pharaoh was like going, duh, if you're the one who comes up with the solution, you ought to be able to run with it. And so that's when God elevated him. He humbled himself under the mighty hand of God, and he was exalted in due time. And we're too quick to want to be exalted. And I tell you, there's probably been 111 times over the past 10 years that I've wanted to walk away from all this because of how hard the discipline has been. But we keep pressing on through to the higher calling, because the privilege of being disciplined by the Lord, we will be used for great things later on down the road. But we got to be patient.
Joe says being pruned and growing is not easy yet. And it's a blessing. Very interesting. That was great, brother. It made me think of the difference between walking with the Lord and the ups and downs that we go through and the chastisement that he puts us through, and not walking through the Lord and going through the same things. We get in a different mindset of why those things happen and what they what we're accomplishing once we go through them. It's
Mhm.
very, very interesting to me, and I've thought about this is that uh, we will put our priorities in different places when either walking with the Lord or not walking with the Lord. And of course, we're talking about privilege, but when these things happen to us, uh, if we're still in a negative way of thinking about, well, I'm going, like you had to go through this move, but if I wasn't walking with the Lord, then the frustration of it may not even allow me to do or get to the end result that I need to get to. With you walking with the Lord and going through those things, you already had an end result in mind. You knew the purpose of this, and you gave God the glory for the purpose of it. Whereas not walking with the Lord, it's also what I talk about when I'm mentioning hope. When we're walking with the Lord, we have hope. When you're not walking with the Lord, you have hope. But with the Lord is a true hope that manifests itself, whereas a false hope can never manifest itself. And I think our thought process of what we go through when we're not walking with the Lord is the devastation that we end up with because we're looking at a false hope. So anyway, makes it easy for me to look at it that way, because that's my life, is hope. If I didn't have the hope of the Lord, and my wife, which has, I know for a fact, she's probably so far, and she doesn't like me to say this, but if I had not been married to her these past 21 years, 26 years, I don't even remember how long it's been that we've been married, I'd probably be in jail. I was just that type of person. But also at the same time, we both, committed our lives to the Lord. So it was a process and a new hope that I had that allowed me to go through the things that I've gone through in these past years. Whereas if I didn't have the Lord and my wife, I'm sure it's the Lord, I would probably be in jail. I just probably would have lived the worst life I possibly could. So it's only when you look back that you recognize what you have going forward.
Yeah. Well, even through this move, I mean, sometimes my attitude just stunk. And it was my wife that had to keep putting, no, we're going to continue. And I'm looking at this. There's no way we're going to get this done. And she's just like, stop. We're going to get this done.
Right.
And she was pulling me through.
Right.
So, and that's part of the provision of the Lord, that knowing that he's going to put people around you who are going to carry you through.
Very true. Very, very true. That's why we should keep those that have that hope around us all the time. Very good. So it's good that you're where you are, because obviously you have people that are like-minded around you all the time, rather than the place you were, which did not have. So that's good.
Yeah,
it's good that you had somebody to help you move at least a little bit where you were, but it's obvious that as you said, once you got to your destination, it was a totally different story.
Right off the bat, we could sense the difference, and we're just excited about it. And one thing that that Julia keeps saying is that we need time to heal. We need time for restoration. Because she's very prophetic. I mean, she operates at a very high level in prophetic ministry. As a matter of fact, sometimes we had to bring her back down to earth every once in a while, but she knows the calling. She says, you're an apostle, and recognizing the battle that we went through and how long it was and sustained it was, she knows that we had the stuffing kicked out of us. So she says, you need time to rest, you need time to recover, and to recharge your batteries. And what we found is that over the past probably 6 months, that it was increasingly difficult for us to minister because we had nothing left in the tank. And when you're constantly getting people that are taking from you, and you're in a place that's taking from you, it wasn't necessarily just one or two individuals. It was where we were, that's all they do there. That's the whole spiritual map, is that it's just sucking the life out of you.
I agree.
And I mean, anybody who's ever ministered faithfully unto the Lord will understand that. And we just got to the point where even getting up even preparing a message on Saturday, before I took the time off in November, and even in December when I did a couple of messages, it became so hard for me to prepare a message because I just didn't want to. I just didn't want to anymore.
And yet they were so good.
Well, I appreciate that. Me, I fought every step. There were times I didn't get done till like sometimes 2:00 on Saturday morning. It's just like, all right, I got to finish this off here. So just being in a place where we know that there are people who are nurturing us, and that's the provision of the Lord. That is the privilege of walking with him, that he will provide all of our needs according to his riches and glory. And I mean, look what happened with Joseph when he finally, through that training, gets released into ministry. He restores his family. I mean, how many of us would be looking at our brothers for the first time as just like he'd have them all up on stocks and nobody ever saw him again. But he blessed them. Yeah. Because he understood the goodness of God and how God, and he says at the end there of Genesis that what you meant for evil, okay, in your fallenness and your unbelief, God used for good. And so we've got to see that.
You know, I was just thinking, that's it, real interesting what you said there. And I'm thinking of our world history books. The world history books usually record, men and probably some women too that were leaders, but it records mostly the really negative things that happened in history, the wars and how they worked here and there. But yet the history that's in the Bible, that's in Torah and the prophets and the writings, that history is still history too. So it's interesting if you could take the history that's recorded in the history books, which is who knows, men are fallible. So how much of it is accurate or not when we know that the Bible is accurate. But look at like this story here with Joseph, which ended off great. It ended off good, and the children of Israel were allowed to leave. But if you could get together all the things that are recorded outside of the Bible with those that are inside the Bible, I wonder how many very positive things happened in history that were never recorded. And mostly because for forever through time, it's like if it's a negative thing, that gets people's attention. If it's a positive thing, oh yeah, okay, and you go on. But if it's negative, then you dwell on those things, and that's why those things in history have been recorded.
My son actually has a series of books that he's going through right now, and they're called Horrible Histories. And
horrible, it's all about, is that right?
So, you know, you got the Roman Empire and all the bad things that they used to do in the, and, you know, my son is very much like me. He's a history buff. He's a factoid machine. And we love, as a matter of fact, in the movie, what's it called? The Greatest Show on Earth. When he sets up the museum for the first time, he says, people love the macabre.
Oh,
I mean, that's why
that's
horror movies are so exciting. And
my point exactly.
News, nobody would read good news. They actually have tried over, you know, different periods of time to come up with a good news. Nobody wants to hear the good news. It doesn't catch our attention.
Yeah.
Why is it half the time? Why is it you have to slow down on the highway? Because people are rubbernecking at the accident over the other side.
Yeah, I was just thinking, how many websites are there, news websites are there out there, just regular news websites, and most of the stories are picked, you know, of tragedies or, you know, bad things that are happening. Matter of fact, I had one ready today that, you know, John always likes to do a news story, and I had one ready of a church shooting. But there's like one or two websites that I found that have very positive news, you know, and has great news stories about these little things that have happened to people. And they're usually little things that happen. But when you report the news, usually it's big things that are negative, you know, or politics talking about things that are negative. You know, that type of thing. You rarely get anything positive out of them. And you're probably 100 news websites out there that you could get. And of course, they all kind of report the same thing. But then you only get maybe one or two websites that literally put out good news. Maybe that's the way the world is. There's only a couple of good things that happen every day, and everything else is negative. Who knows? Only because we're not out there in the world making news. You and I are positive, Darryl. We need to get out there and go make some positive news. Yeah,
but then you start talking about it, nobody wants to hear it. Oh, here we go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's cool. All right. What's the other story? You know, yeah. I'm with you. That's just the way it goes. So anyway,
exactly.
You know, talking about news stories, and Darryl or John Craig always likes to throw one in. This one I thought was interesting and at the same time almost unbelievable. But I don't know if you heard in white settlement. Interesting, we're talking about white privilege. But in white settlement, Texas, a gunman pulled out a shotgun during a church service in Texas on Sunday and opened fire. Let's see, a woman who said he made her feel uncomfortable when he sat feet away from her. Now, I want to look at this a little bit. The guy had a shotgun, and he sat a couple of feet away from a woman, and he looked a little weird. I guess he'd been to this church before, because the pastor somewhere in there, I read the deal, and the pastor said that he'd been there or whatever before. But what was great is that they allow I'm trying to, let me find it here. This is so good. Well, I can't find it now, but they were allowed. All the people were allowed to carry guns in this church, and
welcome to
people. What's that?
Welcome to Texas.
Yeah, welcome to Texas. And it's like, you know, it was. I guess there was a church shooting a while back, and then they passed a law, you know, that you could, you know, open carry in churches or whatever like that. And that's why when the guy stood up and was going to shoot him, two people in the church stood up and shot him before he shot off his shotgun. And it's like, you hear these stories about that's why the Muslims haven't taken over the United States yet, because everybody carries guns, so I thought it was interesting.
If you look at this lunacy that's going on in Virginia right now, I mean, the war on the Second Amendment is on, and they're trying to start a civil war there. And one thing that Dave Hodges said from the Common Sense Show, he says, don't the Democrats realize that none of the patriots are going to give up their guns? And if the Democrats give up their guns, they're the ones who are going to be left unarmed in this coming conflict. It's like, it is bizarre. But you know what? The whole reason for the Second Amendment was to protect against tyranny. And what we see in the United States government right now is tyranny. The people have allowed this. The people have voted this in. And once you vote in tyranny, you can't get rid of it. And you're going to have to fight your way out.
Well, that may be what it is we fight our way out with our guns.
Yep. Completely. Listen, I've even been thinking about learning how to shoot. And I mean, I fired a gun once, and that was when I lived in Mexico. That was it, because we don't do that now. I mean, I have different skills that I can use, but kung fu doesn't do you much good when you got bang bang.
Well, I have 2 shotguns sitting less than 5 feet from me. So, somebody should walk in. I should be able to handle it pretty good. So that's.
But ultimately, God is our defense. So
that's right.
He'll protect us.
God and guns. That's all. The 2 3-letter words that start with G, and that's all you need.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a poetic saying in there somewhere. So
you can write a script about it for your show.
That's right. I probably will. Let me put that on the list. God and guns. I like it. I will. Very good. So, all right, Darryl, I think we can close it up. It's been a good show. Good discussion, man. I enjoy doing shows with you.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. I'm glad to kind of be getting settled here so that we can, get back into the swing of things. I've missed our time here online.
I have too. That reminds me that people should go to Messianic LambNetwork.com and look up at the top of the page. You'll see show information and video series. Check out the video series. You're going to find one in there by Darryl called The Spirit of Jezebel. And let me tell you what, you've got 4 now, I believe, in that. And as a matter of fact, the newest one should be up on the homepage for people to go watch. It'll take you to the video series page, and you can see his video. I worked on it yesterday. I don't know that I finished everything, but I know that I did get it up on YouTube. But I'll tell you, they're incredible teachings. I think you should rename that. What is it? The third one, Manly Men. It's or put it parenthetically, Manly Men, because that was really, really good. I think every godly man at least should listen to that or watch that, brother. Very, very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
It's the Lord really impressed upon my heart that this needs to be dealt with right now, and I think the whole Spirit of Jezebel one is going to take me a few weeks to get through, and then we have to deal with Jehu, and I'm really excited about getting to that because we're going to kick butt, take numbers.
Very good.
And that's really what it's all about, is that Donald Trump really is the spirit of Jehu in the United States today. But what someone has also said is that his heart needs to be prayed for in order to remain soft and come to him, because otherwise what he will become is an iron fist, and he will shatter the United States because if they keep going to war against him, he will turn around and use the power that God has given him to utterly crush the people. And these are perilous times that we live in. And I mean, we know God is going to provide, but when God provides, that doesn't mean that it's going to be, we're going to skate right through things.
Yeah, definitely.
If you've ever watched the movie Defiance, it's going to be like that. I mean, hiding out in the wilderness, dealing with the cold and everything else, having to shoot people who who create uprisings within the camp.
Well, we need to get together, and I'll teach you about the Greater Exodus sometime. You just described what has been taught in detail about that period of time. But anyway, very good, brother. Appreciate you so much. And once again, Darryl's series, The Spirit of Jezebel, you can find on the Messianic Lamb Network.com website. And I have a new show coming on Wednesday morning, same time as this show, Eastern 9:45. But you can go to the website and find my webpage on the website, and it'll give you your time in maybe another time zone. And we're going to have some fun on that. I don't know how much of it will be serious. Kind of depends on whether Darryl comes on or not. So could make all the difference. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And John and Sandi will be back next week. And we'll be back to the regular programming. Ta-ta.
Have a good week.
Have a good week.
And I'll see you tomorrow on the Chameleon Church Show.
Actually, that's right. I forgot about that. I guess I'm supposed to be on there too.
Are you?
I guess I am. Alan and I had a long telephone conversation, and so yeah, guess I'm there too. So anyway,
all
right. I'll see you there later.
Okay,
Leroy.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.